welcome to the Vote Schwabe podcast. I'm your host and candidate, Walter Schwabe. I'm running for Ward 2 in Strathcona County, and one of the things that I'm running on is bringing community together. And with that in mind, I thought it would be really a lot of fun to explore different elements of bringing community together. And I thought, who better to speak to than a world authority, Jim Diers, who is the former director of the City of Seattle's Department of Neighborhoods for 14 years. Today, he travels around the world delivering speeches, workshops, and community building to community associations, nonprofits, and local governments. And that's exactly how I met Jim, in fact. He had come up to Strathcona County a couple of years ago and spoke to a small group of us who were interested in building and community and learning more about that. Jim has received many awards working on community-focused work, but one in particular, the Innovations Award from the Kennedy School of Government, is incredibly impressive among many others. He's also the author of Neighbor Power, Building Community the Seattle Way. Jim Diers, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here.
So, Jim, I've looked through your website, neighborpower.org, and was reading your blog and just doing a little prep for this show. And I wanted to ask you, what is asset-based community development?
It's a fancy term for a really simple idea, which is just building on the strengths of a community. That too oftentimes our approach to working with communities is just to focus on their needs and what they're missing, and then all of the power is taken away from the community, and we miss all of the resources that they could bring and their unique solutions, their unique perspective, and solutions tend to come from the outside. So the whole idea of asset-based community development is to start with the community strengths, with the gifts of the individuals, the different associations in the community, all of the underutilized physical and natural resources, the local economy, the local culture, history, and identity of the place, and how you can mobilize those to do things that government probably couldn't do or couldn't do on its own.
So really leveraging how the community members, your neighbors, have already sort of self-organized or put effort and time into things that they feel are important.
And it's also a way to get a lot more people engaged, because too oftentimes we've labeled people by what they're missing, just as we label places that way. So we've labeled most people by their needs rather than by their gifts. We label people as disabled and at-risk youth and non-English speaking and old people, and unemployed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when we just focus on what people are missing, we kind of write them out of community. We make them part of a service system. So it's about how do we lift off those labels and focus on the gifts that everybody has to offer.
That's interesting. I really love that perspective. It just gets you to focus on the, obviously the positives or in the direction you want people to go. So tell me about, you've been in this, we'll call it a business for a minute. You've been in this business for a long time, but what have you seen as you've traveled around the world that, are really some of the struggles that communities face today? Like, what is community building in the 21st century? Because you've been in this area, since before in the late 80s. So what does it look like today?
Well, the things are definitely changing. I think there's a lot of things that are contributing to the breakdown of community. Things like single-purpose land use, where we have bedroom communities where people are just going to sleep, and then they might drive 45 minutes to go to the mall to shop, and we're losing our main streets. And they might commute an hour to work. So in a sense, people have many different communities, but in a sense, no community at all, because they don't bump into the same people like they used to do when we lived, learned, worked, and played all in the same place. People are increasingly mobile, people moving from place to place over the course of their lives, and if they're always on the move, it's hard to build relationships. People are spending more time working, so there's less time to be involved in community. People are spending a lot of time on screens of all types, one-way screens, and that's become a substitute oftentimes for personal relationships. Fear is breaking down community in many places. So there's all kinds of things that are contributing to the breakdown of communities, but I think we need community now more than ever. Community isn't an old-fashioned idea. There's some things best done by community, and we really need those things now. Um, Communities are in the best position to push for social justice. Communities are in the best position to strengthen our democracy. Communities are the best in terms of caring for one another, preventing crime, responding to disaster, promoting health. There's no substitute for community. We need it now more than ever. So I think people are finding new ways to reconnect within their communities. The whole local food movement is really exciting right now. It's just, everywhere I go, there's community gardens, including in Strathcona. There's farmers markets. There's urban farms. The whole art movement has really become about how do we do more community involved art rather than just artists doing work for the community. How do we really use art as a way for the communities to share their own visions, their own values, what's special about their place? The whole placemaking movement, where neighbors are coming together to kind of help shape their own place rather than just looking to outside planners, architects, developers, but people really trying to create a unique identity for their own neighborhood. There's a lot of emphasis now on participatory democracy, started in, I think, Brazil, with participatory budgeting, lots of bottom-up planning where communities are being empowered to create their own neighborhood plans. So I think it's a very exciting time right now where people are rediscovering community and finding new ways to come together in community.
Well, it's interesting when you said bedroom community, and, Strathcona County, in particular, Sherwood Park, is often referred to in our region as a bedroom community just because of the way it's evolved over time. And I think that a lot of the things that you pointed out, we are seeing evidence of it here, though, in regards to farmers markets. We have several farmers markets going, 3, I believe, that every week throughout the summer and then throughout even the winter, one continues inside. So we have a very strong sense of that. We have amazing agriculture surrounding us as well.
And you got that cool new that coffee shop. What's the name of that one?
Common Ground.
Common Ground?
Yeah.
Love that place. So it's places like that help rebuild community, places where you can start bumping into your neighbors again and reconnecting.
Well, and as many people will know, in the community, that it is actually volunteer run, and so it's completely supported by that, which is fantastic. So one of the, let's talk about, the barriers, the apathy barrier. So, what I'd like to drill down into is okay, these are the cool things that are happening sort of in some communities around. Certainly, there's some of these elements happening in Strathcona County. In fact, actually, just a quick update for you, Jim. This past year, the county administration received 59 applications for funding for block parties throughout the county.
Oh, that's great.
And that is a new record for the county. So there was 59 block parties, and we actually had one on our block completely. Our family had nothing to do with it. It wasn't campaign related whatsoever. It was literally some of our neighbors decided that this was something cool they wanted to do. So we actually, among the rest of us on the block, got all invited, and it was a lot of fun. And we did certainly get to meet a lot more people on the block itself.
That's very cool. I was just, it seems like a growing movement in Alberta. I did some workshops in Red Deer recently. And there were people there from 17 different jurisdictions around central Alberta. And they all had a big focus on blocks and connecting neighbors at the local level. Many cities really trying to figure out how do we get past that red tape and make it easier for people to do block parties. And actually having programs where they're training people how to be block connectors. They have conversations with their neighbors to find out what their interests are, what their skills are, and then connecting people around shared interests. And connecting people who have needs in the community, like the older person who might need their walk shoveled with the person who has a snowplow. Just figuring out more ways to get people reconnected. It's exciting. There's a lot of good work going on there.
Would you say that that's one of the key ways to overcome the apathy where, and I mean, today's, a lot of today's communities.
I would argue that people aren't apathetic. I think people care. Everybody cares about something. Too many people are feeling frustrated. They're feeling powerless. They're feeling isolated. So I think taking down some of the red tape that makes it hard for people to do the projects they've been wanting to do or to organize the events they want to do. giving people, sharing some stories about the power of community, kind of reminding people about what communities are best capable of doing, reminding people of their own gifts that they have to give, and helping them connect with their neighbors around things they care about. Too oftentimes we're trying to recruit people around what we care about. And it's about spending more time listening to people, finding out what their dreams are, and then helping figure out how they can connect with other people to help realize those dreams.
So, working inside the city of Seattle for over 14 years, how were you able to cross the barrier between administration and red tape, as you'd mentioned, and that is a very big issue in Strathcona County. There's a lot of silos. I've heard from many community folks many folks in the community rather, that it is very difficult to get just about anything done within administration. There's a lot of red tape hoops and shuffling from one department to the other. How did you, working from the inside, look to accomplish that and reduce that struggle?
Yeah, that's certainly not unique to Strathcona. It's a problem everywhere in the world. It's just the nature of bureaucracy. I think several things we did. One is we created a Department of Neighborhoods. So the first time we'd actually organized a department the way the people were organized, by neighborhood, rather than organizing people into functional silos where people are getting engaged around, where we're always starting with the agency's agenda rather than with the people's agenda. And where each department is doing its own outreach. Now, if you start with the community, you get a much more holistic perspective. So that was, I think, the first thing. Second one, we try to figure out, how do we say yes, realizing that there are very legitimate concerns that cause this red tape. There's concerns about liability. There's concerns about health and safety. There's concerns about who's going to maintain these projects. There's concerns about labor, union issues, all very legitimate issues. But there's ways to deal with those issues, to address those issues, that makes it easier for communities to step up and organize a block party, or to build a playground, as you have a couple wonderful playgrounds built by neighbors. Strathcona, there's a lot of cities, a lot of local governments where you can't do that because they put up too much red tape. But thankfully, we've started to cut through that in Strathcona County.
Yeah, Gilmore Park, actually, a local community league.
Yeah, Gilmore, that's the name. I love that place. Yeah. It's really inspiring.
Raised over $300,000 to put a playground in, and now they have plans for a shed to store all sorts of things that the community league wants to have over the years for kids to play with. We we enjoy that park, and that organization has over 200 members, but they're looking to grow throughout that local community of Glen Ellen to bring in more families and kids and make it even stronger. And one of the things I think you'll love this.
And that was a real tribute to Tammy, who really stepped up and figured. I said, I'm gonna make this happen despite the red tape, and it was also a real tribute to the county that they figured out how to take down some of the red tape, because frankly, most places neighbors wouldn't be allowed to do something like that.
No, that's exactly correct. And it's interesting because you'd mentioned Tammy, and she and the community league were able to actually this past July. We up here in Canada are celebrating our 150th birthday, right? Yeah. And so for the 150th, they applied to have a camp out. So in Gilmore Park this year, there were a number of kids and families that actually pitched tents right in Gilmore Park there for the weekend.
Seriously, and that's great.
Yeah, it was a really great effort.
There's a lot of cities that would just be thinking, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen here, and then would deny the permit based on that.
Well, that's exactly right. Like somebody might trip on a tent peg or something, right? And
that's right.
And there you go. It's like, and then
they might never leave.
Yeah, that's right. Now they're squatters, right? Yeah. No, it was absolutely great. And there is a lot of that kind of movement. We still experience and hear from various folks about the administrative barriers to things and how difficult it is. I think we have more work to do there. And one of the things that one of the other things I'm running on is efficient government. So that's why I'm curious as to talking about how we reduce red tape and still
I was just
manage it.
Doing some work in Kitchener, Ontario, and they did a great process and a number of places in Ontario have done this, developing neighborhood strengthening strategies. And they really involved the neighbors in helping to develop those strategies. So I think in Kitchener, they had 5,000 people engaged in putting this together. City of London, they had, I think, a task force of 120 activists that helped develop the neighborhood strategy, 5-year strategy. But Kitchener, one of the key pieces of their strategy is figuring out how to take down red tape. And they were very specific. We want to figure out how can people have better access to community center rooms? How can we do events without facing all these issues around insurance? How can we do a better job, make it easier for people to do block parties? They got very specific about things they wanted to see happen and the red tape they were going to work at removing and making a public commitment to reducing that red tape.
Wow, that's in Kitchener. Wow, that was
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, I think that's something we got to follow up on because that's precisely the kind of barriers that we're having here. So, and I despite that,
and I've been an activist all my life, so I was always very critical of local government. And I got to local government, and I realized, people got into local government because they really care. They get in there because they want to serve the community, and they're often as frustrated with the bureaucracy as the citizens are.
Right.
So, I saw part of my role is how do you help make local government work for both the people in the bureaucracy and people in the community? How do you allow people to do the work they've always wanted to do, and also make it much more community friendly? And I just found real joy in being able to do that.
One of the things that I'm also hearing, and I've witnessed and experienced myself, is the quality of people we have in our administration. And I agree. I love how you position that because we do have people in our administration, absolutely, that care very deeply about the community they live in, they work in, and yet there is this structure they have to work within, and often the frustration on both sides there between the residents and the administration trying to get something done sort of kind of sometimes gets in the way, and I think that's a really great point you make. So, Jim, I'd like to...
if you think about it, it's just the nature of large systems. It's, whether it's a university or whether it's the school district or whether it's a large nonprofit organization. When you get really large, you have to, you have to have some silos. And but that makes it really difficult to work with community. And the larger you get, the more kind of rules you have to have in place, and the more... And people are really risk averse in government, and for good reason, because if anything does go wrong, they catch all kinds of heat from the media, from the public. So what I was really, really eager to do was figure out, how do we give each other a break? How do we allow people in government to relax a little bit and not be worried about every last little thing that could go wrong? And how do we get the community to step up and take a little more responsibility?
Right. It's a fine line, isn't it?
That's right. That's right.
So you managed to do that in the city of Seattle, and there's, a whole host of different types of projects, not only in the Seattle area, but around the world that you've become not only a part of, but maybe just witness to. What are some of your I know there's a lot, and I know that I set you up for, almost failure when I ask you this question, but what are some of the ones that come to mind that you think have really transformed a small neighborhood or a community at large?
Oh, boy, it is hard to know where to start. In Seattle, there have been more than 5,000 community self-help projects, and it really was a huge switch in thinking, both for the community and for local government. Because prior to that time, people were always in communities complaining to government, "Why aren't you doing this for us? Why aren't you doing that?" Government saying, "We don't have enough resources to do everything." And so we said, for projects that have been a priority for the community but haven't been a priority for government, how about if you meet us halfway and provide a cash match in exchange for the community's equal match of volunteer labor. And through that, there have been more than 5,000 projects. So, just fantastic things. Much like the park, Gilmore Park. There have been dozens of parks built by volunteers. There have been new playgrounds built in just about every park and playground and school by the neighbors. We've planted street trees all over the city, reforested woods where we took out the invasive plants and reforested with native plants. Lots of oral history projects, all kinds of public art all over the city, including a huge troll under the bridge. Revitalizing a business district. My old business district in Columbia City had become all boarded up, and through a whole series of community actions, we totally revitalized that business district. all by neighbors. The projects were absolutely phenomenal. I mean, just you get kind of innovation coming out of community that's less likely to come out of the bureaucracy. You get projects that really reflect what's special about the character of that place and the people who live there. But I think the biggest value of these projects is it's a way to start getting neighbors working together. That usually the only way we give people an opportunity to connect with each other is through meetings, and it's the worst possible way to engage people. With projects, unlike with meetings, there's always a result. It's a short-term commitment, and there's a role for absolutely everybody, for kids, for seniors, for people with disabilities, absolutely everybody. And in the process, people build relationships, and that's what community is all about. And once people build relationships, then they're more likely to come to some of those meetings as well, because you need a few of those as well.
Just to stay organized. I love that. You know, it's interesting because I wholeheartedly agree. We launched one of the things that I said is that I want to launch what I call legacy projects. These are projects or things that I would like to remain and exist beyond the election cycle. So one of the things that I'm proposing is a mobile makerspace. In our community, we don't have, say, a green shack program or a shack the semi-permanent shack that sits beside a playground that has all sorts of arts, materials and things like that for kids to play with and be creative. And so one of the things that I've proposed is a mobile makerspace that is basically a covered trailer that you could just move throughout the community and set up shop, on a block or next to a local park. And it'd always be in a slightly different place, but it would allow kids to go to where they're normally going, which is a local park playground. But then this would be a great way for kids to be creative off screens and collaborate. And I know that you've seen other types of sort of mobile solutions that like mobile libraries and things of that nature that you've explained. What do you think of the sort of that mobile makerspace idea?
That could be cool. My real passion though is projects that are really generated by the community, right? So that they own it. Because otherwise, if it's a mobile makerspace, then it requires some staff to staff it, and it may not last beyond whoever idea it was, whatever politician's idea it was. So I've just seen lots of communities that all over Australia, for example, there are men's sheds in every town that are big warehouses full of power tools, and retired men get together and make things for the community using power tools. And very few of them actually have staff. They're just run by community members because they really feel a sense of ownership. It's their idea, and they're making it work.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I agree 100%. This was not something that I proposed, sort of just out of the blue. We have been talking with community folks locally about the idea generally, and we wanted it to have a home, right? It was something we're proposing, but we wanted others in the community to take ownership of it. I wanted, other than to start the conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's the Rotary, or there's got to be some champion in the community for that. But it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Jim, I know that if people listening today they want to learn more about what you're up to, they can head to neighborpower.org. Correct?
That's right, and we misspell neighbor in the States.
There's no you.
There's no you in neighbor, and how can you have a neighbor without you, huh?
Very good. And of course, your book I had mentioned earlier, but I'd like to mention it again, Neighbor Power, Building Community the Seattle Way. Can people buy that on Amazon and other places?
Sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Jim Diers, thank you so much for spending time with me today on the podcast, and I really do appreciate your insights and your opinions, and also the just continuing to spread the word about how we build stronger communities. Thank you so much, Jim, for your time.
Thank you. Great talking with you. Take care.
That was Jim Diers, an amazing community leader, and really a community leader within the global community, learning so much about what we're doing around the world and then bringing it back to home in the local neighborhoods. I really appreciate his time today because he is so incredibly busy. And I want to thank you for your time and listening to this podcast where we talk about bringing community together in Strathcona County. You can learn more about myself and what we're really trying to do here with this campaign, running in Ward 2. You can visit us at voteschwabe.ca. And if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to us, voteschwabe@gmail.com, or you can phone 780-237-9787. Of course, we're on Facebook and Twitter as well. Thank you for your thoughts and concerns and raising issues at the door. Running for Ward 2 in Strathcona County has been an amazing experience thus far, and so I really do hope that you get out and vote on October 16th, and I hope to earn your vote as councillor, and I look forward to working with you to build a stronger community going forward if I am successful. So thank you so much for your vote on October 16th. I'm Walter Schwabe, candidate for councillor, Ward 2 in Strathcona County. Have an amazing day.